Greetings, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Garris, and welcome to the Transporter Room. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a truly exceptional guest, Liz Kloczkowski. Liz is a highly skilled art director whose impressive portfolio includes work on TED Season 2, the Netflix limited series American Primeval, and the NBC series Quantum Leap. But for all of us Star Trek enthusiasts, her standout contribution is her role as the art director for Season 2 and 3 of Star Trek Picard. Let's beam her in. Hello, Liz.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. How's your day going so far?
Good. I haven't been working, so I'm kind of relaxing right now. But it's nice to be on the show.
Well, I thank you. And actually, I'm off this week as well because of where I work at. We're off this week, so I'm getting to do a lot of things, catch up and recordings and editing and all that stuff. So I should be off, but I'm actually working.
For me, all work is fun, really. Making movies is like
true.
It's the most fun.
Well, and exactly. And I remember you talking about working in general about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were on Virtual TrekCon, and somebody made a comment about, having all the, your time off in between jobs and whatnot. And, some of us were like, man, it must be nice to have that time to, kind of relax or, and then go do other things. And there was something you made a comment about, you'll do that for a little bit, but you've got to stay busy is kind of what I understood.
Yeah. I think it's easier to relax when you've got like tons of money and like working, like we work for a living. So the type of film person that I am, the below the line person, we generally have to stay working just because we don't have residuals or like, I don't at my age, I don't have any like extra cash or anything. So I want to stay busy anyways, but even when I'm not working, if that's what you mean, I do like to keep it. There's always a project going. A couple projects right now I can't talk about that. No one's paying me yet, but there's a lot of that kind of, and personal projects. And what would you do if you had some time off? Because when I'm working, there's not really that much time off, so you kind of have to get it all done in the off hours.
Correct. And like we were talking before we started recording, like a typical day. We'll get more into it in a little bit, but like if you're working on American Primeval, what would be kind of like a typical work day? How many hours would you be on set for something like that?
So art directors, we're on set in the morning, but we're not there all day unless something's going wrong, or if sometimes if there's a special day, we'll stay there longer. But we're usually there in the morning, so whatever time they want to start. So if they're starting at 9 and I've got there's fire or crazy stuff happening, we'll get there a couple hours early. So maybe 7, or if it's a 7 call, then we'll be there at 4. There early, making sure everything's all ready to go. But then so we'll be there a couple hours until they get their first shot off. And then we're dealing with tomorrow's builds because that stuff's not ready. So then we leave and go to that. And then we'll go to the office and, there'll be people's drawings we have to look over, or the group will meet and say, hey, these are the things going on. Could you do this? And you do this. So, you try to work 7 to 7 or 7 to 5 or something, 5 p.m. we all kind of want to be done, but it doesn't always happen that way. And then if there's night shoots, everything gets kind of pushed because the night shoots, they won't start shooting until 10 or 11 a.m. so that they can be there, until 10 p.m. or even later sometimes. So we all stagger around that, but they're usually a 12-hour day. And then if things are going wrong, it could be 14 or 16 or more. But so days where we can leave early, we do.
You jump on those and you get out of there. Well, that's good I didn't know that. And a lot of people don't know that probably. And we'll probably get into a little bit more, but I just want to say one thing. I was very thankful that last year I jumped back onto the Twitterverse in around the time of STLV, because that was kind of how we got connected, because I saw you, with some of your stuff from your merchandise that you had at I think it was STLV that you were, shipping and selling. I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna buy some of that stuff, like the shirt and everything. So I'm glad we were able to stay connected. I got on Twitter when it first came out years ago. Then I started joining other podcasts like the Seventh World, Decon, Chamber, and all those. And I got back on, and oh my God, all of the pictures I started seeing coming from STLV last year was, I just couldn't believe how big that convention is. It
Yeah,
blew
it's
my mind.
probably the biggest Star Trek convention I think I've been to. And I haven't been to all of them, but
Yeah.
um, it's pretty big. It's pretty fun.
Well, I plan on going in the near future, probably in 2026.
Oh
Um,
yeah, is that
but
60th anniversary?
mhm,
Yeah, that's gonna be big.
heck yeah,
Hmm.
hell yeah. I can't go this year, so since I can't go this year, I'm like, I'll go next year, and it'll be worth it, 10 times worth it. So,
Yeah, totally.
um,
That's good to go.
so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your background and everything, and something I heard, and it's kind of going about art directors, but something I heard you say in an interview one time was you were on a mad hunt for a cereal bowl for a Kellogg's commercial,
Oh yeah.
which you mentioned that it actually kind of, and I didn't know this, but it fell out of the scope of an art director. So that actually got me wondering if you wouldn't mind explaining, for those of us that are not in the industry, the role of the actual art director.
Sure, that's a good question. And the cereal bowls, yeah, it's a funny story. So commercials, that was a commercial, like a Kellogg's commercial. They tend to we tend to be more fluid, and they're so fast that everyone has to get the work just has to get done. So I'll just fill in and do wherever. So it hurt me a little bit for TV and film because the roles are pretty like an art director's role is very specific in those industries, and so you basically you don't want to. It's not your job. It's someone else's job, and so you want to let them do it. Um, but yeah, the art director basically we service the production designer as like project managers kind of. So the designer is like they're doing the meetings with the director and they're really thinking about the overall scope, and we're like the wedding planners. And so a team of us, basically each set is like a wedding is kind of how I describe it. And then we're the people that like we don't actually build anything physically. Like I don't paint, I don't because there's someone that does. We're like the managers that make sure that everything is there when it's supposed to be and that the set gets done. So over we basically supervise mostly construction paint, greens, like all the trees and foliage and all of that, plaster, like the wallpaper, all of that. And then we work pretty closely with the set decorator who does all the furniture and all the smalls and the drapery and the curtains and all of that. So the decorator is kind of set deck is a separate department. And then and in set deck, the shoppers all work for them. So technically, this Kellogg's Bowl would be a buyer, would be the person that would go and do that. But on the commercial I was on, there was no buyer, and they have like more loose rules. But we're basically like project managers. And the bigger the show, the more art directors there are.
Okay, I'm glad you explained it like you explained it that way as the PM, as a project manager, because that's what I've always, because when even when we were talking, I was like, what does the art director do? And now it makes a lot more sense. Is you're gonna take, and that was something I was gonna say, like in the hierarchy, you've got I guess it's the production designer and then the art directors.
Yeah, and if it's a big show, there'll be a supervising art director, which they basically manage what we're all doing and making sure that like if there's an art director that has too much work or who's going to do this, like they'll assign the sets based on our skill set. Like on Picard, between me and Kit Stolen, Kit does all like the organic stuff and the alien cities and the Borg cube and all that stuff with the tubes, and I was assigned like all the like sleek spaceship interiors because that was kind of more
Yeah,
my
I
thing.
think you got the better deal personally.
Well, but either way, I mean, Kit would have done a great on what on my sets, but knowing our skill sets, that's kind of why that gets why that that separate why that divide goes. Like Kit excelled doing all the Borg stuff, and I would have cried. So that's they do that. The supervising art director kind of does the assignments and makes sure that like the overall. But that's like all the management side. The designer is more on the creative side, and they're still like the biggest project manager. Like if the sets aren't there, the designer is the one that's going to get the call. But we're like the day to day, so we're the ones that like I interface with all of these different people every day that that it's too much for one person to do. So that's why we separate it out by set. So it'll be a supervising art director and then an art director per set. And a lot of us will have like a bunch of sets.
Oh wow. Well, and I have some pictures. I'm not gonna. Oh, I've got your portfolio here in front of me, and I'm definitely gonna be asking about that because some of those sets are look amazing. Um, but I was so okay. I will. Well, now I understand, and I hope this because I'll be honest, the industry, y'all's industry in general, is sometimes just so hard to understand. Like executive producers, co-producers, but and so on and so on. And then art director, super. It just there's
Yeah. Well, even like there's a producer, like a project manager. I think that's actually a title in production, but we're like that's what we do for art. So everyone's kind
correct.
of got their category.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, it's an interesting world that y'all work in. I have learned and been seeing that. Have you always had a passion for like art and movies when you were younger? Is that so what led you to getting into art direction and just the whole, art, movies, theater career?
Yeah, I was always creative, and I think in high school I like painted backdrops and I acted a little bit, but most of it was like props and all of that stuff. So I had done that. I had that skill set, and I was always artistic, and I could paint, and I was really good with computers, which ended up helping me later. But when I went to college, I didn't quite know what I was doing, and I was in journalism school because I wanted to write. And then somebody in the film program recruited me, and they said, "No, you're better. You're more creative. It's less reporting and more storytelling." And I really like that. So I dropped out of journalism. Well, I still have a minor in journalism, but I switched from journalism to film. And then in the film school, there was like an opening for a production designer, and somebody saw me and they were like, "Oh yeah, you'd be perfect for that." So you're doing everything from like this styling the set to like putting sunscreen on the actor. Like we were doing everything. But from there in film school, a bunch of the seniors had seen that I was designing, and so they started putting me on all of their projects as the designer because nobody wanted to do that kind of. And like the what is the AFI? They have their own production design program. At Ithaca, we didn't really, and so it was a lot of like guys in camera or lighting or sound. But I wasn't really a camera person. Like I wasn't with it, but I was really good with the art. And I made plenty of mistakes, and like the learning how to prep and learning how to do it properly. Like you don't know what you're doing in college. So I look back at those projects and I'm like, oh, I didn't know at all. But then when I came to LA, I said I'm going to pursue production design as a career because there are designers on movies, and really the passion is storytelling, and it's whether it's film or TV, and commercials are fun and they pay the bills. But that I knew it was going to be that field, and I knew production was what I wanted to do versus people that work in the office or like that type of thing. It's more. I hate to say being on set is more creative, but or more exciting, but it definitely was, and it's harder. They have longer hours and less stability. But yeah, I just moved when I moved to LA. I just started interning for people and working on free projects, and then the cheap projects, and then eventually you kind of you know level yourself up.
Oh wow. So what was your first I guess, breakout project that you got to work on?
I was the annoying orange for Cartoon Network. It's like a YouTube show.
I'm on YouTube, I'm on YouTube, la 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 la, la la. Hey, who are you? You look kind of weird. You must be an apple.
But they let me build stuff. Like the art department was in like the parking garage of this little Cartoon Network, or not even the garage. It was like the parking lot. Like we had a little tent, but I didn't know how to do anything. And they were like, "Okay, go to the Do It Center and pick up these materials. And here's how you're going to sculpt a space rock." And so they showed me a lot. So they gave me a builder credit on that, which was like I swept up cigarette butts most of the time. Like just keeping everything clean and whatever. But those people I met on that show 12 years ago are still all my friends today. Like we never lost contact. Like one of my best friends was on that first art department, and then since then, like I've hired them on jobs. So it's funny how like just be nice to the intern because you never know, where they're going to find. But yeah, I remember it was the Annoying Orange, and then my first like big break show was How to Get Away with Murder. Was show that I was watching, and then they called me, and I was like, "Can you come in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can come in." I literally had the show on that morning, so.
How did that work out? Had you applied for it or
We have like a list. Like if you're not working in the union, there's like a list of names that people can call from. And like if you look at it now, it's like 74 pages long. Like it's really, really sad how many people aren't working. But that day, I was just lucky that they found me on the list, and I was like low on the list. And all the people that they had called either weren't available or no one had answered. And there was some guy that had told them no, that then changed his mind. But I had been hired in that like quick period. So it was pretty close that I almost didn't get it. But it was just from the list, which like it would be great to get a call from the list soon.
wow, that's actually really interesting. I mean, obviously I didn't know any of that, but man, I mean, that's just also cool. Be sitting there, you're watching the series, your phone rings. Hey, you want to come be our art director?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
You need to come interview. So you go and you meet the designer, and if the designer likes you, they're like, yeah, can you start Monday? Like I had another show. It's just a quick little side story. A friend of mine was like, hey, my friend is installing the Oscars red carpet. Do you want to come like look at the install? And so basically you show up at night and like all the guys are building and there's a red carpet and the step and repeat, it's the Oscars. So I went to like take pictures on the red carpet like the night before. But the art director that was there installing, I just walked up to him and I said, oh, look, are you getting those from Daisian? And how are you doing that? How did you, I had questions about how I was curious, about that install. And he was starting a show in Mexico that following week. And I was already working. I was on Promising Young Woman, but I was just wrapping up. And so I got a call on my last day of Promising Young Woman. Hey, do you remember me from the Oscars red carpet? And I was like, yeah. He's like, can you come out to Mexico and help me? And I was like, sure. And so he called me on Thursday or Friday. I think it was Friday. And he goes, yeah, I need you to start Monday. And so that means that you fly Sunday to like, it was Baja, from here, it's like a 2-hour flight. Like it's not bad, but I ended up staying there for like 5 months, maybe 4 or 5 months, but with 2 days notice. And I just packed everything up and zoomed down there, but it was off I just met this guy randomly and we hit it off. So yeah, I should go and see if he's working.
Yeah, wow, Liz. That's a badass story. I mean, it just like, wow, 2 days, you want to come to Mexico and work? Sure.
And I didn't pack the right clothes. And I at first it was just going to be a couple of weeks. Like they didn't tell me how long it was going to be. It ended up being like the whole summer. So I had a roommate at the time. I'm like, can you watch my cats? So they took care of the cats. And I was just like, living in Baja for a little bit. But yeah, so those types of stories like make it worth it. So then you get addicted to the adventure a little bit, and we could talk about that later. But
oh yeah, I bet you do.
And I'm like, don't make me do it.
Oh, I know. Oh man, that's so cool. Oh man, you've got some cool stories so far. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really enjoying talking right now.
Okay,
oh
good.
My, so tell me a little about. Okay, before I get to Primeval, I just gotta know because I was an original Quantum Leap fan, and so what was it like working on the redo, the one they just did? I mean, I personally enjoyed the new one. I'm sad that it's gone and how they left us hanging like that. But so what was it like getting to work on a series like that?
Oh, it was fun. So it shot at Universal, which Ted did too. And Universal is like my favorite lot. Like you're at the studio, you got the golf cart and you zoom around all the historic spots, like Quantum shot. Basically we would go out a couple days a week, like out as an off lot. But if they could shoot anything on the lot, they would. So we've been like on every crevice of New York Street and of the Colonial Drive. I mean, because every episode is a different time period. So we had a lot of creativity with that. Like, oh, how do we make this look like 1970s? But it was definitely a hard show. And it was hard I mean, every show, I'll say, had its own challenges, but Quantum was especially hard because they were running off of kind of like a sitcom budget, and every episode is a new time period. And so for me, what I found the most restricting was how we had to hack through a lot of stuff. Like, yeah, no, you can't do that, or we'd break time period, or there's stuff would be missing. And actually, when you look at the sets, I thought they looked really great, but a lot of them weren't our best work, and a lot of it was because of money restrictions. So, and even like American Primeval we shot out of town, so it was a little cheaper. But like, I'm not saying you need unlimited money, because I've seen great low budget projects, but it's just like, for the time that you need, the faster you need to get something done, the more money you have to throw at it. And so we were under the gun where we had 6 or 7 days to turn around an episode, which was like not a lot to shoot, from 1977 to Cold War to the 1999 spaceship, and it was like 7 days. And we would, we'd have tricks where we would have sets ready at the end of the 7th. So we'd have maybe 14 days to get one set ready if we needed more time. But it just wasn't enough time and not enough money to really do a great job. Like, if you notice, none of that got nominated for anything. It's fine. Like, you're surviving. And so that, I will say it's hard. And I don't know if Quantum the first time was like that, because I think they had a little bit more. It was the first time around. It's a little bit more flexibility. But yeah, it was tough. That type of restriction is like, and it's just like, you're not sleeping because there's always a problem or something that didn't get done because you didn't have enough time to do it. So it's pretty stressful. And so I made it. I stayed the first season, like the first 12 episodes, and then I had gotten the call for Primeval, and I was like, so in a show like that at Universal, someone else will take. So I had someone take my place right away.
Yeah, I've heard you explain how that works, and we can, when we get into Picard, we'll definitely hear about that story. But I'm sorry, I'm looking here at your pictures from Quantum Leap, and I'm sorry, those look. I mean, you've got the nuclear facility, then the '89 San Francisco earthquake. I mean, those look great. So
yeah, I'm proud of what we did. It's just like hard.
Oh yeah. Oh, I bet it's hard. Like, and I'll be honest, probably one of my favorite episodes of that one was that Haunted Manor one. That had to be, that looked fun.
Yeah, that was Chris Grismer. Chris was one of our executive producers, writer. Like, he was up there. He directed that episode, and it was good. So that we shot that at the Chicken House, is what they call it at Universal. I was gonna Google what it is, but we just call it the Chicken House. It's like this old, like, decrepit kind of manor on the inside, and we had to, like, most of it was like fixing stuff that was like rotted and had fallen over. So we had gone in and like did a bunch of repairs on it to shoot, but the whole episode was in there, so it ended up like working out. But we had, like, on a sitcom budget or something small, usually you only have one art director, and we had 4. We had 2 art directors and 2 assistants, because there was no way to get everything done. So we had to, like, for 7 days, we would kind of divide and conquer, and that was the only way that you could get any work done.
I can't even. I'm sorry. Let's just not even get into the whole budgets and Hollywood right now. But it's just, I mean, looking at these sets, how they ever expected it to run on a sitcom budget is just mind-boggling to me. But
and that, like, I say that, like, sitcom, like, I don't know, everyone's got their own numbers, but that just seeing, like, hey, why, that's too much money. That's too much money. And like, the other thing is, you have like a pattern, and if your pattern budget is what you have every episode, and the pattern budget was just so low, and I'm like, so yeah, that was probably, of all of them, like, that was probably the most challenging, just because you're not getting like on Primeval, we were happy with how everything looked, so it's okay that you're kind of freezing, and and Picard too, I mean, the same thing. Like, Picard, we wanted more money to do more stuff, but everything was so expensive that, like, so they have to draw the line eventually.
Well, looking at your Primeval stuff as well, I mean, those sets look like, I mean, I could feel like I would have been back in that time period, honestly.
Yeah, that was pretty intense, but like, even just the selection of every log and branch and all of that, was the detail in that was pretty crazy. So
you went down to the individual, like, branch and log details.
Yeah. So that's, the art director will select we select materials, like that's part of our job. And when the materials are like the people found it and made it in the woods, I would go through the woods with like a piece of like red tape, and I would tape stuff that the guys were to go collect. And then like Lindsay too. Lindsay was our assistant, one of our assistants. She would go out hunting in the woods, and she would drag all this stuff back to the fort, and she'd just have a pile, and then she'd be like, okay, you can use that, you can use that. And so the art directors will select like what they're making stuff out of. The designer too. I mean, obviously the designer most of all will say this is what I wanted, and then we would basically be there to make sure that they didn't use the wrong thing. Like, or like the designer, she was pretty specific with the end cuts, with like how the stuff looked if somebody hacked it with an axe, just to make sure, like the log cabins, like the edges of them were all jagged, because the guys are going to make everything out of it with chainsaws, and so if you draw it straight, they will cut it straight.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. How deep? You've
So
got to
like,
make it look like it.
Yeah, so we're like the guiders, and we just make sure that it's authentic and its manufacturing. And yeah, we're just, the guys will be like, hey, what do you want me to make this out of? Or how does this look? And so we're the ones checking in with them, just keeping them on track.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of work. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Everyone's got like, demanding jobs. This is just
True.
like the amount of stuff that we do for like what you see on screen, like 1 minute on screen, or
Yeah.
I had some bits that didn't even make the cut on Primeval. And so you're like, well,
Oh my gosh.
mhm.
Oh my gosh. Now we have to get to the meat of the real story that everybody that's on our channels wants to know about. How did you end up working on Picard?
Yeah. Okay. So the story from the beginning. So I remember I told you How to Get Away with Murder was like my first like big union show. Like I walked in there and I was like, I looked around, and like the food and the lighting and the stage. It was my first show like on a real stage down at Sunset Gower, which is like I think the old Columbia. But the decorator on that show was Tim Steppick. Tim ended up getting season 2 of Picard, and so Tim got me in. So when someone's hiring for a position, if you know someone, hey, I know this girl Liz, she's really good, you guys should hire her. Tim can only say that so many times, and so he kept like putting my resume on. It wasn't Dave's desk. I think it was Mark, who was Dave's supervising art director. Every time they had an opening, Tim was like, hey, you guys should call Liz. And I'm super grateful to Tim, but what I want people to do, I want people to do that. I want them to say, oh, she makes my life easier, or I enjoy working with her. That's kind of how we get work, is being known as like someone that people want to work with. So I was really fortunate that Tim and I just kept a good relationship, and he really like championed for me. But Picard they were pretty full, and I remember I even cold emailed Dave Blass like before I knew him, like, hey, I really like Star Trek, and I'd love to work on the show. And I actually had a job at that point. I was on actually 2 shows. I was on like Love Island, and I was on Rebel was like this Hulu show that went like 1 season. But I like just heard that they were all crewing up, and I was like, you plan to jump ship. But so that was versus not having a job and just being like happy for anything. So yeah. So that was it. So the art directors, that type of show, like the $100 million budget shows, someone like me won't normally get hired because of my experience level. I'm working my way up, but I'm not 30 years in the industry. Right now I'm like, as an art director, I'm like 8. But before that was 4 years ago. So that was 4 years in. So you're pretty beginner. So no one will trust you. Really, not no one, but most people won't choose a newbie to run like a multi-million-dollar set, because if something goes wrong, then like you want the experienced people to be doing that. So there were 3 art directors. They were all very experienced, and then there were 2 assistant art directors. So one of the assistants was leaving, and I was like, I had just started art directing, but you basically like you take the lower position, but to get in the door. So one of the assistants was leaving, and I was like, all right, I'm going to try for assistant position, because I think 3 times I had tried for art director, and someone else had been hired each time. So the assistant left. I took her place. I got in. I'm like walking around the Star Trek lot, like, how did I do this? And then a couple weeks later, one of the art directors was leaving because he was going to do Griselda. So he went and did that. And he was like, you guys should just give Liz my position. So like basically they upgraded me. And in that time, I had a couple of weeks where I got to show Dave, like, I'm watching Star Trek. I was watching it like every day. Like I knew when you mentioned stuff, like I knew the references and like the research. Like I kind of had the overachieving was working. And so Dave was like, yeah, we'll upgrade Liz, but on a trial period. So they gave me a couple of small sets. And as long as I didn't screw those up, then I'd be okay. And so they gave me like, it was the end of season 2. It was there was like a bunch of Vulcans with a piece submersible underwater, like in the flashback, and the bar, the like really cool Girardi bar where Patrick Stewart's wife is singing. I had that one, and I had like this warehouse where Brent Spiner like assembled all of his like Borgie people, whatever. So I had a couple of like small sets, and he liked, and then the NASA Gala. Bruce and I had the NASA Gala. So that we knocked it out of the park because that was pretty snazzy. And so Dave was happy with what we were doing there. And then he was like, Liz is like, she cares more about Star Trek than anybody. And so he started giving me, I think he gave me the Eleos and the sick bay. And it was, again, it was like, let's see how she does, and if they see that you're failing, they'll take it away from you. But I was like, no one's taking anything away from me. So I like was there late and like got everything done. But both of those sets, everyone was really happy with how those sets looked. So then from there, Dave started assigning me the rooms in the Titan. So that climb, like I'm still kind of in shock because I shouldn't have even been there to begin with, so.
Wow. That's a hell of a climb. Well, and I heard something and you said it as well, but I heard somewhere else that he would quiz you on an episode. Like, what was it? I heard, it was like, what episode did Picard, fall asleep and spend like, a whole lifetime in 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. It was like, what's the one with the flute, and I'm like, Inner Light, so, or he would give you an episode and say, watch this tonight. And then people wouldn't, and I was like, all right, I'm going to watch. And I was in Deep Space Nine, I think, by the time season 3 had come around, because I was watching everything from the beginning. So I had seen a lot of them anyways. And so he would send me an episode, like past tense, we pulled references from in Picard season 2, and I had already seen it. So that was, or even just taking pictures of stuff that I'm like, hey, I like this, or I like this. And I would like text it to him, and he was like, yeah, I like that. So work that into, like, I had an idea for the sick bay for the sensor cluster, and it was something I saw in Deep Space Nine. So because we had that kind of working relationship, and he was seeing stuff that he liked, and he was like, oh, she's actually researching Star Trek. So that, but the quiz, yeah, he really wanted to make sure that the people, like, if he's giving you a set, that you knew like what the history was behind it. So that's all Dave.
That's awesome. Well, so then after you got done with those, those smaller sets or in your trial sets, how was it when I can't even fathom what went through your mind the day they said, oh, here, you're going to be working on rebuilding the bridge of the Enterprise D.
Yeah, well, I think at that point I was like blind with ambition. So I was like the Eleos, they had given me the sick bay. And then he was like, all right, you're going to do the transporter room and then the cell room, because they were the same room that we had to like switch over. So I had that. And then I had like the EPS room and all the techie rooms. And then we had this big hallway that wrapped around, connected all those rooms and the crew quarters. So every time he was like, hey, I'm going to assign you this set, I was like, yes. So I just like took everything. And then it was pretty early on in season 3. So we started building the Enterprise D like months before we would normally, because construction wanted to have enough time to really get it done. So once they struck the chateau off of that stage, Enterprise D was going in. And so construction was like, great, get us drawings and we'll start building it like on the side so that we're not rushing to do it at the end. And so I heard that we were starting to build it, but there was no scripts. So if there's no script, you're like, well, what am I even doing? But I had just asked Dave, I was like, who's doing the D? Like, who's got it? And so I was kind of like, I want it. And then I think Mark was hesitant because I had so many sets. Like I was like knee deep in like the nacelle room, the transporter room, the sick bay had stuff going on. What else? I mean, the crew quarters, we kept having changeovers. And so Mark was like, Liz has too much. Because if you overload somebody, even if they're good, like they'll start to let stuff slip because they just have too much work. But I was there till like 10 o'clock every night. And so he was like, all right, I'll let you do the Enterprise D. And I was like, great. So what are we doing? And he was like, I have no idea. There's no script. So if there's no script, like you don't know, like we didn't even know, like, was it going to be Generations D? Was it going to be what season? Is it going to be Pilot Bridge? Is it going to be the episode, season 7? It's just basically given me a set designer named Kevin Cross. And so when Kevin freed up, he would start drafting the D, and then I was to give him direction. So that Kevin was busy, and then eventually Kevin freed up. And so I'm like on my chat because he was an at-home worker. And eventually Kevin was like, all right, what do you have for me? And I was like, well, I think he's designing the D. So Kevin was like, great. So what am I doing? And I had to like, basically Dave would come into my office, we'd meet, and I'd be like, what should I have Kevin do? You know? And so we had to come up with a plan. So I basically was like, the bridge, the footprint was the same throughout, you know, and like they changed the carpet and stuff, but the actual, so that's when we had gone to archives and gotten drawings. And I was basically like, Kevin, start with the ramp and draw that. That was what construction had built by Christmas. But then once we knew, all right, we're going to do season 7, I just started pulling reference. And because he's just this faceless man on Zoom, I would just send him reference. Like, here's what the transporter room should look like. And here's what this should look like. And your Kilobrand was pulling us reference. So, but Kevin was just like, all right, I need more info. What do you know about the ceilings? And I'd go through the drawings, and there was a ceiling drawing. And so I'd scan that and send it to him. So Kevin was, and then I kind of forgot about him because I had a lot going on. So, and he needed time to just be like left alone to 3D model it. So then one day he just emailed me, hey, here's the first draft of the model, and like sent me, he had basically 3D modeled the whole D. And then from there, I'm like, all right, what do we do? We have to go through it and do notes. So that's all kind of, it's almost like a side project while the big stuff is happening. And then construction will tell you, hey, we need a drawing by this date so we can start building. And like, I need to know how much lumber I'm ordering. And so Tomas would basically stay on me with deadlines, and I would make sure I was making construction's deadlines. So by January, he was like, hey, I need to start laying the carpet down. Like by January 4th, I remember January 14th, and I like didn't have the carpet selected. So I had to like, you know, in the end of December, have that stuff picked out, or early January, have it picked out so that the set could, so that towards the end of that, the beginning of that year, because I think the set was ready at the end of February, and it shot like the first couple days of March of 21. Of 21? Yeah, it's 21. Yeah, I think it was 21 because it came out in
22, I think.
Did it, or was it 23?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember.
I remember the months.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, it came out February of 23. Yeah. Okay, so it was February of 22, I think. Yeah, that makes sense, because then 21 is when they hired me to do season 2. So because we shot season 2 and 3 back to back, so it was 21 into 22. But yeah, so anyways, that's kind of how that goes. So you see how it kind of snowballs, but as long as I'm like, it's my set, like, you know, go leave me alone. Because so the other art directors were like, oh, who's doing the Enterprise D? And I was like, luckily I had created,
me.
a relationship with Dave that Dave was like, yeah, we're going to let Liz do it. So. Oh,
man, that's, well, you know what? Your homework paid off, and you're just, you know, and it does, because that's what, you know, when you show initiative like that, and he picked that up and realized she knows what she's going to do and she's going to follow through.
Right.
Yeah, it was almost probably a no-brainer. Now, some other people might not have been too happy about it, but oh well. That was you busted your butt and got it.
Right. And so then you see me at I'm at like a convention with Dave now. We're sitting at our table, like, you know, signing autographs or doing something. Like, what? Like, how did that? You know, when you look at that trajectory, like, I'm still in shock. Like, none of that should have.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine, you know, telling, you know, 20-year-old Liz that's in college, who, from what I know, what I've understood, you've always been a Star Trek fan. That one day I'm going to be rebuilding the bridge of the Enterprise D.
Right. Yeah. No,
I,
even as kids watching it, like we were always like, Dad, put the Star Trek on. It was between like Star Trek or like This Old House, like whatever was airing at the same time. And so we were like, we want the show, and so just be watching as kids and then end up being the one to like get to Wedding Planet.
Oh man, that's so cool. I can't even, like, that's almost would be like it's just a dream.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like a dream
lucky.
come true.
Yeah, but every event that's happened, like all of it's a fluke. Like even I wouldn't have had Star Trek if the people didn't call me off the list to work on How to Get Away with Murder. And even then too, they were like, "Can you interview right now?" And I was like on my way to coffee with a friend, and I called him. I was like, "Hey, dude, I got to go home and like get my portfolio and go to this interview." And versus being like, "No, I'm not available till tomorrow," because the other guy would have had the job by then. So I just was like, I think it's like seeing an opportunity and being able to seize it. But I've been very lucky because some people don't get like you never get that opportunity. So I've been lucky, like those a few of those calls have like it's been really, really amazing.
Oh, I know. It sounds like it. And I remember, I cannot remember if it was Andrew Robinson or, oh gosh, Jimmy Darren, who talked about, or somebody, one of the other actors in their franchise made a comment about how they always just happen to, be in that right place, right time, answer the phone, or be like, no, I don't want that. And then eventually it just came back around and it was, right. I remember watching that and they were like,
Yeah, like how it works out. Like,
yeah, it's just crazy. And so, so I just got a few more, just little, other questions, nothing too crazy, but like, so have you, I mean, we already know, but so, what drew you into Star Trek in general, like back when you were growing up or whatnot?
Yeah, I think that as kids, we were pretty heavily into sci-fi. So Star Trek, Star Wars, Blade Runner. I mean, I always liked that stuff more than I liked like a rom-com. Like, not that we watched a lot of it, but like I remember my grandparents had just the only movies they had in their basement. So like my parents would be visiting and we'd be at the grandparents' house, were 3 VHSs of like the original series Star Wars, and then the original 3 Star Wars, and then like Search for Spock was another VHS that we had. And at first I thought they were all related because I was like, oh, they're all on spaceships. And then when you watch them, you're like, oh, never mind. I'm talking like as 7 years old, where you're trying to like figure out like who's who and what's what. But Star Trek, Next Gen and Deep Space Nine were on TV like as I was growing up in the 90s. So, and we didn't have a satellite. We didn't have cable. We had like this like wonky old antenna that you'd have to like rotate to like make the TV work. And I remember Star Trek was one of the channels that came in clear, and my dad, he would watch it. He would be watching us. He'd come home from work with the kids and he'd be waiting for my mom to come home to like help him because there was always so many of us. But he knew that like at the end of Star Trek, my mom would come home right after that episode. So he would, and I think it was Voyager by that point. It would just always be on. That was his timer to know, oh, Nancy's done with her shift and she'll be home after that. So it was just always on. And I remember as a kid being like, the captains were always different. And but Worf was in all of them. So as a kid, we not all of them, but like between Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. So as a kid, I remember like, and we watched everything out of order, but the Borg episodes would always be on, and I'm like, oh, put that one on, just because it was cool to look at. And you're like, what, like this the space aspect of it, and it wasn't until like later on, even over COVID, where I watched everything in a row, and I was like, oh, I remember watching that as a kid, but I didn't put together this like the continuity of story I never really had. But that was it was always on TV, and like like I said, I'm Star Trek and Star Wars. I'm not like we'll say one or the other. I'm like, nope, it's sci-fi for me. Gattaca, like anything that had some type of sci-fi element, or fantasy, all of it.
Exactly. And I just recently watched for the first time ever the original Blade Runner. I'd never watched it, and it was actually really good.
my favorite film of all time. It's like my number one.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking with some people on Discord in one of our groups, and I said, "Yeah, I've never seen Blade Runner." And one of the gentlemen said, "Okay, he said, put your phone down, go get it right now, and watch it, and then report back."
Yeah. No, you have to. That was like, my literally favorite film. Just because it's art and the world building and the storytelling, all of it. It's just like the secret, trying to figure stuff out. What is this? How does this work? Replicants, all of it. But the sets, and actually one of my first, it was like an early movie I had worked on, like uncredited, but the first designer that was going to work on it was David Snyder. David Snyder was the art director on Blade Runner. And so the producers were like, "Hey, David, Liz is a huge fan." And he was like, "Do you want to look at behind the scenes photos with me?" And I was like, "Yes." And so he literally clicked through like a slideshow and like told me all the stories behind all the sets. So that was like my first like ever experience. And that was back when I didn't know how to do anything. Like he was like, "Oh, okay, I see what your skill set is." And he follows me, like we're friends on Facebook now. And so he's kind of seen like, my career. But that was like one of my first interactions with an art director ever.
Oh man, that's so cool. You've had a great career so far, and for being so still kind of youngish in the industry, in art director though.
Yeah. No, I'd still say I'm on the younger side. Like 8 years. I've been in LA 12 years, but my first couple of years were I was in non-union and I was in stop motion, and then I was a coordinator. So I'm like 8 years as an art director. So that it's not very. That's pretty short in comparison, considering you have to do 35. Everyone that's done 30 to 40. And then some people don't retire because it's so fulfilling. So they just like, "Oh, let's do another movie." Like I think Greg Papalia, who I worked with on American Primeval, he's like 42 years in the industry. And he was like, he's not working either. He's like, what is going on? Like, I've never seen this before. But it's cool to even have like your cohorts. Like, there's a big age range. There's people younger than me that have like, amazing skill sets, and they went, their schooling was more refined than mine. I learned a lot of it on the fly. And then people that have been in it since hand drafting. All of us kind of throw together, and making a movie is making a movie.
Wow, hand drafting. I can't even move.
Yeah. There's still a small group of them that still hand draft, and we scan them. We scan them in, and then look at them on our computers. Primeval, a lot of like the wall in the fort and a lot of the buildings, because of the drawing of the sticks, the little sticky things, it's hard to do on a computer. So Greg, beautiful, beautiful illustrative pencil drawings. So
man. And then you would just scan them in and digitize them after that.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's freaking cool, Liz. I guess, so, obviously you've been to conventions. Have you ever done the cruise or anything like that yet?
No, I haven't been invited on the cruise yet. So, you guys can put it in a raffle or whatever, put a recommendation in for me. But I've done a bunch of conventions, and I'm going to FedCon again this year, which is in Germany. And they fly me out. Yeah. And FedCon is cool. FedCon is like European Vegas. So it's pretty big, but Europeans are more kind of family oriented. So it's like the hotel is a little smaller, but there's just the vendor, like it's still pretty big. So but it's Germany. So it's like, I want to go to Europe, so that's I'm excited to do that this year. That's in May.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah. After seeing all the pictures this year, I gave in and booked the cruise for 26.
Okay. Oh yeah, 60th. That's good.
For 60th. So
you're gonna do Vegas.
That's my plan. So I'll go do both of those. I'm already signed up to go to the Creation Convention in Chicago this November. So I don't know. We almost need to talk to some people to get you to bring you back out to some of these.
Yeah. But you can expect me at Vegas because I have FOMO, so I'll go to Vegas. You'll see me there. I went to San Francisco this year, kind of last minute, but my sister lives up there. So
Mhm.
if I'm visiting with her, I could just dip over to the convention. So that's kind of where, and Creation's been really kind to me. So if I tell them I want to go or I'm in town, they'll send me a pass. So I didn't talk or do anything there. I just kind of hung out for the weekend.
Mhm.
But yeah, San Francisco's a good one too. The convention center is nice. The hotel that they put in.
I do have one last question, and it's the one I ask everybody: is what piece of Star Trek technology do you wish existed today?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, replicators probably. Because I think replicators are the reason why you don't need to work for food or
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing and all that. You just replicate it. So it changed all of humanity. Like you went to work just to have a purpose and not because you needed to, and there's still starvation and planets without it. But I think that technology, it would change the game for like industry and world hunger. Right.
Yep. That's like the same answer everybody gives just about is
really?
replicators. So when the first person I asked, I thought, or second person, I always thought it'd be transporters, warp drive, mainly transporters because you can get from point, get here like that. But again, and then there was replicators and they gave basically the same explanation as you did. I was like,
so you're telling me I'm not original, but no, transporters, people get scrambled in them. And the transporter technology, like you're agreeing to be your molecules get all separated and then I'm not doing it. Now, okay, warp technology is interesting because that you can, that would open up to space travel. But if you warp somewhere and you're stuck, you want to be able to be on a ship that has unlimited food. So I still think you need a replicator before you go that far.
Oh yeah, no, yes. I mean, I honestly now after talking with everybody, I'm like, yeah, replicator's really the choice that you need because, and it's just the right thing, get there quick and then replicate your stuff.
Right. Start with that first.
Yep. All right. Well, Liz, I want to thank you again for giving me your time today. And I really had a great time talking and learning so much about what you do and just your industry in general.
Thank you for all the good questions. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Well, I'll talk to you later. You have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for watching The Transporter Room. For just $5 per month, enjoy ad-free access to this episode and all previous ones, plus exclusive bonus content. Sign up now on Patreon.